Social Security spousal benefits can pay up to half of the highest earner's benefit. But what exactly does that mean, and why do so many people get caught by surprise when they get less than they expected? For example, you might hear people talk about switching to a spousal benefit, but that rarely works the way people think. And that can be a big problem because you might have already decided to quit your job, or you might have made some other decisions that are going to be really painful to backpedal from. We want to avoid those types of problems, and fortunately, we can boil things down to 2 or 3 basic rules that can help most couples understand and maximize what's available to them. This video doesn't cover everything related to spousal benefits, but it does address the most common mistakes that potential clients are about to make before we talk. And those are things that would cause them to get less than they expect. And as we go through this, I'll be using a free online tool, OpenSocialSecurity, that you can follow along with using your own numbers. So again, it doesn't cover everybody in every case, but the spouse with the lowest earnings or no Social Security benefit of their own can get up to half of their spouse's full retirement age benefit when, number 1, the higher earning spouse is taking benefits, and number 2, the lower earning spouse begins taking all of their benefits, including the spousal benefit, at their full retirement age or later. And then we might as well add number 3, which is going to be that there are no additional complicating factors. And again, these don't apply to every couple, but they might apply to you, so you do want to do some research. There's a lot to unpack here, and we're primarily going to focus on those first 2 rules because that'll be a foundation even if you have some of these complicating factors. So let's dive in and look at some examples and details. Quick refresher on spousal benefits. This is a huge piece of the program. There are about 1.9 million households currently getting spousal benefits. And once again, you can get up to half of the higher earner's benefit. So for example, let's say the higher earner has a benefit of $3,000 per month. The lower earner, or the person who did not pay into Social Security, could potentially get up to $1,500 per month. That's half of $3,000. Unfortunately, people often think it's always going to be half, and that is not the case. It is often less than half, so we're going to talk about how to detect that or avoid it. This can also be confusing because people use the terms interchangeably, and I'm sure I'm guilty of that as well. I probably will do it in this video. So when somebody says spousal benefit, does that mean the entire amount that the lower earning spouse is getting, even if they worked and paid into Social Security? Or are we just talking about the component or the spousal top off, the piece that goes on top of a worker's base benefit? If they had a smaller benefit, back to our example, let's say somebody was going to get $1,000 of their own, but due to the spousal benefit, they're going to go up to $1,500. That $500 is the second piece. So again, there can be 2 components to a spousal benefit, but if the spouse never worked outside the home or never paid into Social Security, then pretty much all of it is going to be the spousal offset or the spousal top off, otherwise known as a spousal benefit. To calculate these different pieces, assuming both people are at full retirement age or above, you start with the higher earning spouse's primary insurance amount, or PIA. That's the same as their benefit at full retirement age. You divide that number by 2. Then you take away the lower earning spouse's PIA, which might be 0 if they never worked outside of the home. Don't worry, we're going to do an example here in a minute. And the result is the spousal top off. And then you would add in the lower earner's PIA or their FRA benefit to get to the full monthly benefit that the spouse is going to get. So it is critical here to use the benefit amounts at full retirement age. You do not use a benefit amount that's been reduced for early claiming, and likewise, you wouldn't use a benefit that comes from delayed claiming, a higher benefit. So here's an example. We've got worker Wanda with a benefit at full retirement age of $3,000 per month. And her spouse Slim, earned less during his working years. His benefit is $800 a month at his full retirement age. And they're the same age. So how are spousal benefits calculated for this couple? Well, Slim could get potentially up to $1,500 per month, but that's only if they observe those 2 essential rules we just talked about. So let's look at their numbers. Wanda's PIA, or her benefit at full retirement age, is $3,000 per month, We divide that in half, and that's $1,500. Then we, step 3, take away Slim's PIA, which is $1,500 minus $800 for a result of $700. So that $700 there is the spousal top off or the spousal offset. Then we add back Slim's benefit to find his maximum benefit that he could get. So that's going to be the $700 spousal top off plus his $800 benefit for a total of $1,500. Now, if Slim's benefit was zero because he never worked outside the home, for example, you could still get to that same $1,500 using this process. So for step 3 there, 1,500 minus nothing is 1,500. So the full amount is a spousal benefit. So far, so good, but the reality is that couples often claim at different ages, not just their full retirement age. So if the lower earning spouse or the non-working spouse takes their benefit before their full retirement age, they will never get to 50% of the higher earner's full retirement age benefit, at least not while they are still alive. So please forgive me, I'm going to say it again. If a lower earning spouse starts benefits before their own full retirement age, they will not get to 50% of the higher earning spouse's full retirement age benefit. It's not going to happen. Not while they're both still living. So back to our rules. Number 1 is that the higher earner is taking benefits. And that's because the higher earner effectively unlocks the spousal benefit for the lower earning spouse. In other words, there is no spousal benefit for most couples until the higher earner begins their benefit. Back to our example, let's assume Slim takes his benefit at age 63, but Wanda doesn't claim until 67. And again, they're both the same age, so there's a gap between those filing dates. There's a couple years. Then during that time, Slim can get his own benefit, which is of course reduced due to early claiming, but there will be no spousal top-off until Wanda takes her benefits. So moving over to OpenSocialSecurity, again, this is a free online tool developed by Mike Piper. There will be a link in the description for it. And so we've got Wanda up here, female, born in March of 69, and her PIA is $3,000 a month. Then we've got Slim, same birth date, $800 a month is his benefit. And we're going to just skip past, and we'll come back to the recommendation in a minute. We're going to skip past and we're going to go down to change some of the inputs. So in this example, you are Wanda and your spouse, or spouse Slim is the spouse. So we're going to click submit here. I've got the years in for those ages I just said. Slim at age 63, Wanda at age 67. And you're going to notice this won't even work, first of all, because a person cannot start their spousal benefits before the other spouse, right? So we had to have you or Wanda unlock the spousal benefit. So we can make this match to 2036. Now 2036 is in both spots, but Slim is going to begin his own benefit a couple of years beforehand, and we can see how that plays out. Keep in mind here that we've got, and we want to look at the full years, so we're going to skip down to 2037. We've got your benefit, or Wanda's benefit, of $36,000, the worker's benefit of $36,000. So half of that is $18,000. The goal is to get there. So a couple of things to look at. Number 1, there is no benefit here for Wanda or the worker. There is a spouse's base benefit. So Slim is getting his base benefit here, but there's no spousal top-off happening until 2036, when the higher earner begins taking benefits and unlocks the spousal benefit. That's when it can start. But here's an issue to be aware of. We're going to look at the full year again because they were born in March, so that messes things up. If we add these two together, it's not 18,000. It's not half of 36,000. It's a little bit less. It's 15,600. So we're a little bit short, and the reason for that is because Slim's base benefit is reduced due to early claiming. Instead of waiting until full retirement age, he ended up claiming early, so his base benefit is smaller than it could be. However, this is the full spousal top-off. So we ran through the numbers and we said $700 a month is going to be the biggest spousal top-off possible, and this is indeed $700 per month. So we have a case where there's the full spousal top off, but it's going on top of a reduced base benefit for Slim. And just for giggles, why don't we take a look at what happens if Slim has no benefit, because let's say he never worked outside the home, and we're going to go on down. There is a full benefit of about $18,000 per year, because there was really going to be no benefit for Slim. He did not have his own benefit. Nothing happens until Wanda, the worker, or the higher earning person, you in this software case, takes their own benefit. And once that happens, it's going to unlock the full benefit, because this happened at the workers, the higher earners, full retirement age. Once again, this doesn't apply to every single situation. As just one example, a divorced spouse could potentially get a spousal benefit off their ex's record even before their ex-spouse claims. And that prevents people from delaying claiming intentionally out of spite to prevent their ex-spouse from getting a benefit. So that's the example of number one, the spouse that works unlocking the lower earning or non-working spouse's benefit. Now let's look at rule number two, how to actually maximize the amount that the lower earning or non-working spouse gets. And if you're finding this helpful, please leave a quick thumbs up. Once again, rule number two is that the lower earning or non-working spouse must become eligible for the spousal benefit and really take all benefits after reaching their full retirement age. They can take benefits earlier if they want to, but the total amount is going to be less than half of that higher earner's benefit. So back to our example, Slim and Wanda, they're considering claiming at maybe 66 or 67. Their goal is to maximize their monthly income from Social Security in future years because they expect longevity. So they're willing to wait if needed. So back to OpenSocialSecurity, everything here is at 2035, and that is when they are both 66 years old. And so they're doing it 1 year early, for example. So let's take a look at what happens there. Well, first, Wanda's benefit is not the full $36,000 per year, as we can see, nor is Slim's benefit going to be $18,000, which would be half of the $36,000. It's because they've both claimed early, and Slim became eligible for the spousal benefit before his full retirement age. But we can switch this up, and let's make Slim go at his full retirement age. So Wanda is going to claim a year early. Slim is going to wait. And in this case, he is going to get half of $36,000. All right, so he's getting 50% of her full retirement age benefit. And this is bigger than half of her actual benefit. So he's getting more than 50% of her benefit, but it still remains 50% of her full retirement age benefit. So this stresses the point that when you're calculating spousal benefits, you really want to focus on those full retirement age benefits and just key off of that as you make your calculations. Similarly, it wouldn't help Slim's spousal benefit if Wanda delayed until age 70, let's say. She wants to maximize her benefit. So is that going to affect his spousal benefit? The answer is no, because once again, the spousal benefit is based off of the full retirement age benefit. So it doesn't get those delayed retirement credits. And just for giggles here, we're going to throw in zero income for Slim and just see what that might look like down here. And in this case, again, he's got a partial year, and then the full year going forward is $18,000 per year. So it could be helpful for Wanda to delay if we're talking about survivor benefits, because the survivor is going to step into the biggest benefit available to the household. So if that happens to be, this amount, that's what Slim's going to get if Wanda dies first. But if Wanda delays and makes this benefit as big as possible, that helps to protect Slim in case she dies first. The reality is that most people are going to use a different type of strategy. And one popular strategy is what's often called a split strategy. And that's where the higher earning spouse delays until age 70 and the lower earning spouse claims as early as possible, or age 62. So if we look at the default assumptions and we just, put in the birthdays and I need to put in a benefit here. If we put in the birthdays and the amounts, it's generally going to tell you something pretty close to that. So age 62 and 69 and 5 months. I guess that's not all the way to 70. But that's not all we want to look at. And this approach accomplishes a couple of things. So when the couples are the same age or fairly close, it's relatively easy to ensure that the lower earner gets a full spousal top off because they should be at their full retirement age by the time the higher earner eventually claims. But that benefit goes on top of a reduced benefit. So again, the total spousal benefit is not going to be 50%. It will be less. And it's really important to consider longevity. So the default assumptions assume some standard tables, but if you wanted to try something else, which I highly recommend, you could just put in some different ages. Let's say 90 for Wanda, and we'll say age 90 as well for Slim, and see what is that going to change. Are we still going to do roughly age 62 and 70, or is that going to be different? And the answer is yeah, it's a lot different. So we've got the lower earning spouse, Slim here, spousal Slim, waiting until 67, whereas worker Wanda waits almost until age 70. So as you increase these ages, you're likely going to see the suggested claiming age going up as well. And that's so that you can get more money each month for more months. Delaying can also help with some tax planning strategies. So you might want to do some Roth conversions or spend down some of those pre-tax balances. And that's a lot easier if you don't have Social Security income coming into the household. Of course, the trade-off is you have more years without Social Security income, so you're spending some assets. So I've got videos on that. In particular, the Social Security bridge strategy is worth taking a look into. Ultimately, you can claim whenever you want, early, late, or otherwise. The main thing is to do an analysis and understand what it is you're getting into and how it works. And that way you can figure out what's best. And remember, you might not need to actually have the spousal benefit be half. Maybe it's okay if it's less. So I hope you found that helpful. If you did, please leave a quick thumbs up. Thank you and take care.